There's legitimately 5 quarterbacks that if you were to tell me they all finished in the top 12, I would not be surprised. And if you tell me they all finished outside the top 24, I would not be surprised.
Who are they, and in what order?
So for me, the order is Gardner Minshew 1. 2 is Bryce Young. 3 is Tyler Shuck. 4 is Kirk Cousins. And 5 is J.J. McCarthy.
What about the guys last night? What about Tua and Rodgers? Tua's got the Bengals. Rodgers has the Lions.
They're certainly in the conversation. I do not want to trust Tua Tagovailoa at all. I know last night he played. He got you some good fantasy points. He just does not look good throwing the football right now, and I'm sure they're still going to want to try and run the ball. And in the case of Rodgers, I mean, this could get ugly in Detroit because Detroit coming off a loss and back in their building, he could be chasing points. But I'd rather have all these guys. So right after them in my rankings is Rodgers, and Tua's behind Rodgers. But I think all these guys with their matchups are just in a better spot.
Yeah, I already read it off earlier, but so it's Kansas City. Minshew's at Tennessee. Bryce Young has the Jet. Wait, no, he's the Bucks.
Bryce Young has Tampa Bay.
And Shuck has the Jets. Yeah.
Shuck has the Jets. Cousins has the Cardinals. And McCarthy has the Giants.
Dave, what do you think about that list? What's your order?
Yeah, my order is different. I've got J.J. McCarthy at the top. 26 fantasy points each of his last 2 games. The Giants have allowed at least 21 fantasy points to 7 of the past 9 quarterbacks. I just think that this is the quarterback who has the most upside of all the guys that are on the waiver wire. And he's out there in 2/3 of leagues. If I had Mahomes and McCarthy's on the waiver wire, he's who I'm adding and he's who I'm starting in the fantasy playoffs. It sounds back-ass words, but he's really played well without getting great numbers from Justin Jefferson, and that's telling. And so I would lean into that. I think he's got the most upside and the same type of floor. Jamey said it. I wouldn't be surprised if any of these guys finished top 12. I'd be surprised if none of them finished top 20. But McCarthy's the one with the most upside, safest floor. They all kind of have they all have similar floors. I can't say safe floor. Tyler Shuck is next up against the Jets. I thought the Jets stunk last week against Jacksonville. Shuck has been around 20 fantasy points pretty much every single start he's had. His run game is a humongous question mark. His offensive line, at least that's decent. That's a strike against McCarthy. You mentioned Darrisaw's week to week. But Shuck would be second for me and Cousins would be third. Great matchup, and he might get Drake London back. The only worry I would have about Shuck that I don't quite have, the worry that I have about Cousins that I don't quite have with McCarthy and Shuck is that Cousins could end up handing off a lot. This could be a game where Bijan and Algier just kind of take over and they pummel the Cardinals on the ground. That would leave light stats for Cousins, but he could still get you 16. So we could say the floor for him is 16. The floor for Shuck is 19. The floor for McCarthy is -2, but the ceiling is highest for McCarthy because he's done it each of the last 2 weeks. And I don't think the Giants are going to stymie him. I don't think their defense is.
So my fear for both Cousins and McCarthy is the run games taking over because the 2 teams that they're facing cannot stop the run.
And McCarthy has only thrown, I think, 25 or 26 passes in each of his last 2 games. He's put up big numbers. He's put up touchdowns
from having big games.
Yeah, it's not something you want to bank on necessarily, but there's pros and cons to all of them. And maybe the other angle here is which quarterbacks are you sitting this week? Are you sitting Dak Prescott against the Chargers?
Not for.
I don't like the matchup, but I wouldn't start him for any of these or sit him for any of these guys.
Are you sitting Jordan Love at Chicago? Caleb Williams?
No, not for those guys.
I can be talked into sitting Love.
How about Trevor Lawrence at Denver?
I could definitely be talked into sitting.
He's
Trevor
just ahead
Lawrence
of those guys for me. Again, I think it's huge upside, huge downside. So it depends on how risky you want to be with your fantasy roster. Like to sit a guy that's been as hot as Trevor Lawrence is tough.
Yeah, he's really had amazing matchups though, and this was a fun topic we talked about on Beyond the Box Score yesterday. I mean, Jordan Love was playing great football, and then he went to Denver and had a pretty bad fantasy game. So, but I didn't mention this defensive injury. The Broncos put one of their starting safeties on IR, so that could affect them. All right, those are your quarterbacks, whether it's Minshew or Young or Shuck or Cousins or McCarthy. If you're feeling risky with Tua or Rodgers, the thing I like about Rodgers, they don't throw the ball, but I looked at their game log, and in a game like this, I think you should expect at least 30, maybe up to 35 pass attempts for Rodgers based on similar game scripts, assuming the Lions score on them. So a lot of options if you're desperate. And I wouldn't even say desperate if you're needy. Dave, who are your top 3 running backs?
Carter is the top running back. That's pretty easy. We've talked a lot about him and the opportunity that he's got this week. There's a big gap after that. I don't love the matchup for Krosky Merritt, and I'm worried about how much work he'll get versus the Eagles, especially if they're trailing. I took a look at it earlier today, 39% snap share and 33 total carries for 3.5 yards in the second half of games when the Commanders are down by 2 scores or more.
Okay.
So quite a qualifier, quite a mouthful, but it definitely tells you that Krosky Merritt, if the chips are down and the Commanders are trailing against Philadelphia, that he might not get many opportunities. And so if you're starting him, you're hoping that he can get off to a hot start. I don't really like Audric Estime, but he might have a great opportunity for the Saints, lead that backfield. He's got the kind of speed that makes Kareem Hunt look like CJ2K. And Devin Neal has to be out. I did like how he had a couple of design screens last week. And I mean, he literally was off the practice squad onto the field for the Saints, and they had stuff designed for him. And so that was at least mildly encouraging. Those would be my top 3. And I'm not even sure if I would put Krosky Merritt ahead of Estime just because I'm worried about game script for him.
The Jets have allowed 23 touchdowns to running backs, 15 rushing, 8 receiving. Estime versus Hull, they had about the same amount of carries. Estime was the 3rd down back after Devin Neal left with the injury.
You just wonder who they're going to use. That's the question.
Yeah. All right, Jamey, top 3 wide receivers.
So I put Jayden Reed ahead of Luther Burden just because of Burden's injury. So if we were to find out that Burden plays, then Burden would be the better of the 2. So I agree with Dave on that. But as of now, we weren't ranking Luther Burden. The fact that he's day-to-day, the fact that there's a game on Saturday, you got to be a little bit concerned there. So if you want to, not a guy that's top 3, but keep an eye on Olamide Zaccheaus. He's had 4 games this season with at least 6 targets. And in those 4 games, he's averaging 12.6 PPR points. So that's a good number 3 receiver if he's going to get those opportunities. And he did score against the Packers 2 weeks ago. Didn't have a lot of touches, but a lot of targets, but something to keep an eye on there. But I have Reed 1, Burden 2, and 3, I believe, is Jalen Coker. Great matchup against Tampa Bay and coming off back-to-back games where he scored a touchdown. So 14 PPR points in each of his last 2 outings. And I do think that this could be a game where they have to throw a little bit, especially if Tampa Bay's offense shows up. So don't think that Coker is a bad number 3 receiver for this week.
Yeah, you also have Adonai Mitchell on there. And, typically it's one of those weeks where there's some good wide receiver options, but we know that they can always disappoint. Tight end, Dave, who are the top tight ends?
Colby is number 1, 79% available. All kinds of great metrics that suggest that he's a touchdown monster for the Rams. Although you could just look at his box score and you'd know that he's a touchdown monster for the Rams. Colson Loveland doesn't quite make the cut. He's 34% available, but he's really close to being a great tight end ad and a good flex if you're a little thin at wide receiver in a PPR league. Look for both of those tight ends. I've got Brenton Strange 3rd. I know that it's kind of gross. His numbers haven't been good the last couple of weeks, but I just wonder if this is going to be the type of game where Trevor Lawrence isn't going to feel comfortable throwing deep, isn't going to be able to hold on the ball for a while, needs to check down, needs to throw short. And that would be where Strange could get 5 catches, 50 yards, maybe find the end zone. It's a tough call between him and Theo Johnson. You can even throw Rondé Gadsden in there. He makes the cut. He's 37% available. I'm not in love or committed to any of those 3 tight ends. In fact, Strange and Theo Johnson, they don't even make the cut for us, the 35% qualifier. They're available in fewer of those leagues. So maybe Gadsden by default should be second. But the bottom line is that once you get past Parkinson and Loveland, it ain't great at tight end.
All right. To look at tight end, first of all, if you have Tyler Warren, we're moving on.
I would start Parkinson and
I'm
Loveland
going
over
to drop
Warren.
him for a couple guys.
Yep.
Harold Fannin Jr., how many, and let's throw Darren Waller in there, and let's throw Kyle Pitts in there, right? Let's say they're available. We like them over Fannin?
Yeah.
And how do you rank Waller, Pitts, Parkinson?
Pitts, Parkinson, Waller right now.
I agree.
If you go into Thursday and Drake London is playing, do you move Parkinson ahead of Pitts?
No.
Maybe. Definitely a non-PPR. Probably not in half and full.
Slightly off topic, but if 2 wide receivers come back this week, I'm hopeful that the replacements we've been riding can do better than what they did before the injuries. And that would be Pitts. Like, he can have a good game and a great matchup. And Michael Wilson in the same game. I feel like he's earned it. But I don't it is like, it is such a week changer. Who's going to win the matchup? Who's, for the Michael Wilson manager, are you getting this wide receiver 1 game, or are you getting maybe 8 points because Marvin Harrison Jr. is back? But I'm thinking maybe it'll be more of an even target share between the two.
I don't think there's been a player where I've been like more excited about if Michael Wilson starts than like it's crazy.
I know. I mean, he's be ahead of Rashee Rice. He'd be ahead of George Pickens, I assume, at this point.
Oh, yes.
I mean, he's amazing. All right. Well, Jamey, now it's time for coverage you can count on, sponsored by Nationwide. So, Jamey, give me a DST to stream this week.
Yeah, we said to pick this defense up last week because of this upcoming matchup, but it's the Saints, taking on the Jets. Based on the defenses that are available, it's just such a great opportunity, such a great matchup. Brady Cook did not look great last week, as we're well aware. We'll see if he starts again, but even if it's Tyrod Taylor or Justin Fields, this offense is struggling. I'd be much more encouraged by the Saints if it is Brady Cook, but still I'd be starting them as a low-end option. They have top 5 upside, so great opportunity for the Saints. The Vikings defense, I think, will make things uncomfortable for Jackson Dart, so not the best scenario, but I think the Vikings are still in play. And then I think the Lions will get after Aaron Rodgers in their building. So, again, looking at the defenses that are available, they're not my favorite, but the Saints are the only one that's a guaranteed starter.
Yeah. Last week was such an exciting week for DSTs. This week, not so much, right?
In terms of the ones that are available. Now, you may see, a defense that was available that you didn't pick up last week that could be out there, like the Chiefs or the Bills. Their matchups for this week are very good, clearly. Taking on the Chiefs, taking on the Titans, and the Bills taking on the Browns. So those are 2 that I like a lot that may still be out there. But, and still the 49ers too. I know they didn't play well against the Titans, but I don't think the Colts offense is going to put up much of a fight unless Jonathan Taylor goes crazy, which he could. I mean, Tony Pollard just ran for 100 yards against that 49ers defense. But, I mean, Phillip Rivers is not going to make a lot of plays down the field. So hopefully Robert Saleh comes up with a good plan. Yeah,
I said those were the 3 I was going to ask you about. The Chiefs, the Niners. The thing about the Chiefs, they're facing the Titans. The Titans have been really bad for the DSTs the last 2 weeks. Titans have been so bad against DSTs all year. And then the last 2 weeks, the Browns, awful. The 49ers, awful. We feel confident starting the Chiefs. Would you start the Chiefs or the Saints? Chiefs are at Tennessee. Saints have the Jets at home.
Still the Chiefs.
Chiefs.
How about the Bills at Cleveland or the Saints?
Bills,
I believe, are in my top 5. So Bills would be my preferred one.
And then the Niners at the Colts or the Saints?
I believe I have the Saints ahead of the Niners.
Me too. I'm less than.
Now that will change if Tyrod plays.
Right. So today's Tuesday. Apparently the Jets will have a quarterback decision made by Wednesday. All right. So that, let's see. Anything we're missing here? I don't think so. Just we'll recap in a second. But that was coverage you can count on, sponsored by Nationwide. Jamey, how about kickers?
So again, keep an eye on some of the ones that are available. I went just based on matchups and in the case of the first 2 for sure, weather. So no concerns with Pinheiro taking on the Colts. He's been great for the majority of the time he's been with the 49ers. Zane Gonzalez, what a great matchup against the Cardinals. They're one of the best teams in terms of the most fantasy points. I believe they're number 2. And then Borregales taking on Baltimore. They give up a lot of fantasy points to kickers also. So weather could be an issue there, but that could also be a field goal game.
I haven't done a full weather check, but I believe this weekend is going to be significantly warmer than last weekend. I think we're going to be in much better shape with weather. Like in New York, I tell you, in the Northeast, it seems like it's actually going to be kind of a nice weekend in the 40s maybe, whereas it felt like it was 12 degrees or something, over the weekends. I think we're going to be in a better spot with weather this week.